Everyone, welcome to episode 1 of the IntegrateLive Rundown. I'm Jeff Nepper, and I'm joined with my partner, Alan Ray. Alan, how are you?
Doing great. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. Hey, I want to apologize in advance, Alan. This was scheduled after my family's vacation, so I am coming actually from Mexico. I don't know how great my camera or my audio feed is going to be, so at some point I will probably shut my camera feed off just to help with bandwidth. So, and Alan, we've talked a little bit since the virtual workshop episode 1 last week. I'm still blown away by the overall support of a brand new community. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I had hoped we'd have 100 people, that we'd have, anywhere from 40 to 50 show up for the actual workshop, to have over 490 people register and have 51 different countries represented in the registration, and have really just to hear all the welcomes from all the different locations and countries was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And even right now, I'm just watching the this webinar, because we are doing this live. This isn't a studio recording. For those of you that are going to watch it later, you're welcome to join these in the future and ask questions and be part of the conversation. But already we're looks like over 40 people coming into the room just to hang out and listen to this episode. So we're excited, and thank you for those that have joined us live for this today. It's really awesome. We appreciate your support. Hey, let's Alan, let's real quick, let's not assume that everybody that's watching this got a chance to already watch the virtual workshop from last week. If you don't mind, Alan, can you share, and let's just real quick recap what we did last week.
Yep.
So the virtual workshops, while Alan's getting that going, are our opportunity to address a real business problem, to bring together some technology, to bring together a system integrator guide, and in real time to solve that problem. And last week, the business problem that we were trying to solve was ultimately, how do you take old legacy systems and make them IIoT compatible, right? It's a bit of a vague term, but ultimately, how do we get data access to old equipment and spend a minimum amount of money, not putting more money than necessary or more integration time than necessary into equipment that might already be towards end of life? And if possible, how do we actually extend that end of life? So if we can attach or access data from those pieces of equipment, get that up into a cloud infrastructure, and then do something with it. That was ultimately the goal. And so, Alan, walk us through the tech that we used and what we actually did, if you would.
Yeah, so Kepware was able to quickly take their Kep server, connect to a legacy PLC, a 505, Allen Bradley 505, able to create some tags off of that, bring some tags into their Kep server. Using their IoT gateway, they were able to quickly create a connection to Hive Enqueue broker, put in the username and the password, and once the connection was completed, then we walk through with Ian Scarrett the configuration to set up a Hive Enqueue, which literally takes minutes to do.
Yeah.
And once we had that completed, Canary was able to subscribe to that broker. Canary then created a mobile application using Axiom, and then showed the application of the data coming from the legacy PLC through Hive Enqueue into Canary, and finally to a mobile application.
Yeah. And what do you think? Was it actual time? I think I didn't look back at the recording, but I want to say it was less than 25 minutes for that to happen.
Yeah, it could have been handled in probably 15 minutes, but we walked through the motions of some of the Hive Enqueue stuff. But
yeah,
the reality is, you should be able to purchase Kepware server, set up a Hive Enqueue for free, purchase Canary, and literally be able to just watch what we did in the workshop and be able to do the exact same thing.
Yeah. It's an extremely easy solution, but it's not I always hesitate to call something easy or simple because sometimes people think it's not powerful if it's easy or if it's simple. There's an art to that, right? To make something simple but yet powerful is really quite a skill. And I think the underlying technology that all of this was using, which we're going to get to, is really what helps enable the power of this solution. So, hey, let's not PowerPoint them to death today, Alan. And I'm guilty of that all the time. But let's get on to the reason everybody's here, the people. So we're just going to go straight through the flow of data and introduce everybody that was part of the call last week. So it's my pleasure to introduce Carew from Kepware. How are you today?
Hey Jeff, I'm good. Happy to be back and happy to be a part of this community representing Kepware. Still a little cold in Maine. I thought it was spring, but still not yet. Holding out for it, but still very cold.
Well, we've got a IntegrateLive scheduled for June. If we want to catch Kyle with good weather, we'll have you back then.
Perfect.
So Kyle, just in general, if you would tell the group once again, kind of your role with Kepware, what gets you excited each day to show up for work, and then let's talk about last week a bit.
Sure. Yeah. So my role within Kepware, the official title is Partner Enablement Engineer. So really, that just means I'm the technical resource for our entire channel. So that includes technology partners, that includes system integrators, that includes our international distributors. Really, just helping everybody learn Kepware. Not quite to the depth of our application engineers, but enough to teach them to do some creative things and teach them the basics and being able to show off Kepware in all of its glory. And in terms of the how well the call went last week, I mean, I'm sure people on this call are no strangers to live demos, and they're always fun, but they're always risky. Never mind, 3 vendors doing it, 3 different products across the globe, not in the same room. It went swimmingly well. I was a little nervous, but hey, it worked really well. And it was great. I think everybody was very open. The participation from the audience was incredible. We had a lot of really enriched discussions. I thought it was great. And I followed up with Jeff and Ray separately and basically just said, hey, you guys are on to something here. I thought it went very, very well.
Yeah, and I can't express to you how much we appreciated that feedback from you. What Kyle's referencing is an email that he sent out to Alan and I that actually hit our inboxes at the same time. I don't think Steve, your partner, would mind us sharing, but Steve also sent us such a similar email, and they crossed wires, and it was just awesome to get that feedback from both of you. And we were just so glad that you guys were part of this. And we've had the chance to work with Kepware all of our careers, and have always just been blown away by the level of professionalism, the assistance, speaking to kind of the openness idea of IntegrateLive, the access that you have to people at Kepware. It's really easy to get a hold of the right person inside of your organization anytime you need an answer to a question. We love that.
For sure.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Alan, anything for Kyle, or do you want to introduce Ian to the group?
Well, I just want to say again, thank you for your support, Kyle, and your kind words. So, Ian, you want to introduce yourself? Let us know how things went for you last week and kind of your overall take on the workshop.
For sure. Well, thanks for having me back. It's great to be part of the community. My name's Ian Scout. I'm the VP of Marketing at Hive Enqueue. So Hive Enqueue is basically all about MQTT and providing an MQTT broker. And I think so. Just to echo kind of build on what Kyle was saying. I think live demos are always risky, and I think what really impressed me is that Kepware and Hive Enqueue, I don't even think we've ever talked before we actually did this demo. Right. And I think that shows the power of this solution, right? Is that in power of the long-term value of this solution, right? That the vendors, it just works, right? It works out of the box, right? And so you don't have to kind of depend on the vendors to have these kind of deep business relationships and technical relationships to get things to work together, right? You can actually deploy this type of solution and things will work together just out of the box, right? And I think that's what we've really shown. And I think people don't kind of appreciate the behind the scenes that kind of Kyle and I got on a call. Jeff kind of said, we want to do this demo. We got on a call. I set up a Hive Cloud instance that Kyle and an email with the URL, and you just start pumping data in, and the Canary guys got it, right? So, and so I think behind the scenes, it was very simple too. We made it look simple on the live demo, but getting to that live demo was very simple too.
Yeah, that's a great insight, Ian. Because you're right. I never even thought about that. I came to the table thinking that you and Kyle had done this in other demos for other groups, maybe a half a dozen times. And
no, exactly. No, for sure. Like, so Hive Canary, Jeff and I have done this type of demo before, right? But we've never actually done one with Kepware, right? And I think if you go back to that architectural diagram that you showed, I think you should put like others, kind of bubbles for other vendors to be able to participate in that, right? Because that's really the power, right? Like it's not just that static diagram, right? That's a living diagram. You can actually add other vendors into that diagram very easily.
Yeah, that's a great point. Absolutely. Well, Ian, we're going to come back to you in just a second. But you brought up an interesting point I want to expand on, and I'm going to use Josh Wolf with Canary to do that. Josh is a software developer at Canary Labs, that historian solution. Josh, if you would tell the group about how long ago Canary supported subscribing to an MQTT JSON data stream.
About 2 weeks ago.
A week before the workshop?
Yep. Yeah, and it was a customer request for us to be able to log data from Kepware. So this kind of worked out really nice. So yeah, traditionally, we've supported Sparkplug B for about 2 years now, maybe a little over 2 years at MQTT. But yeah, we just recently added support for JSON to our collector. And I thought the demo went really well. It went really smooth for live demos. There's a lot going on when you include this many vendors, and a lot of things can go wrong. And yeah, I was impressed. We worked a little bit with Hive, and everything's been really smooth. Setting up things in the cloud before, so yeah, I thought it went really well for the live demo.
Yeah, you and Kyle did a great job, and I'm excited to learn more as we continue this conversation today about kind of what could happen after the fact of historizing the data. There's a lot of kind of questions of, okay, we showed how to historize it, now what? And we can definitely point towards future episodes how that's going to be addressed. But I think overall, just from the tech stack side of it, it was as flawless of a live demo as we could have ever asked for. Secretly, I kind of wanted something to go wrong just for content today, just so we could kind of talk about, oh man, the dumpster fire when it was time to try to get through the firewall or something, right? And so when things go too well, they might look suspicious. But I think if anybody in our listening audience has ever actually worked with MQTT, they probably will testify that this is just the way it usually works if everybody is following the spec properly.
Yeah.
Alan, we had some awesome guides last week that took all of the heavy lifting off of us. I know you're appreciative of that. We introduce them, and let's hear from them.
Yeah, just again, Chris, your ability to host and handle the challenge of managing not just one but multiple vendors and getting them through that process was exceptional, and appreciate it. And if you want to just introduce yourself and talk about how you felt it went from being the host and how you felt it went, throughout the whole process.
Sure. So thank you. First off, it was quite easy. So this was not a huge challenge. These are extremely talented people that are doing this, and both you and Jeff for hosting this whole community. It's just a great place. And so, yep, Vertec was really glad to be a part of this. That being the inaugural first webinar of IntegrateLive, we will always go down as the first people to partner with you on this. So we're down with that. And it went well.
Are you going to make a patch and put it on your vest?
That's what I was going to ask, if they were getting a founding member patch.
Yes. I mean, what's the point of having a vest if you're not going to put additional patches on it?
We'll send you a patch.
Okay, I'm down.
Well, how about a little context? Every year at ICC, which is the Inductive Automation Annual Conference, the user group, their community, Vertec always themes something as an integration group, right? All right, so Chris, tell them about, was it 3 years? Oh, geez, COVID, right? COVID timeline, maybe 4 years ago. What was the Vertec theme?
Hang on, Ryan's got the best.
So we rolled up as motorcycle crew, at the Ignition MC, and so all of us were rocking our motorcycle gang vests in a conference full of people in slacks and polos. I'm like, what's up? We're Vertec. And this goes right in line with the year prior to that. We had fake tattoos and we all got full sleeves.
That's
and
right.
The president of our company even had a neck tattoo of Ignition for Life. So, you can say we're a little committed to the software.
That's great. Ryan,
quick antidote there. I thought I had met you guys before, and then now that I just remembered you guys did that at Ignition, and so it works because I remember that. Well done.
Yeah, but do you remember the polo shirts from the surface of the sun the following year?
I mean, yeah,
I do.
Well, hey, if Chris is the peanut butter, we've got Ryan as the jelly of the sandwich over at Vertec. Mr. Crownover, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Jeff. And yeah, just a huge shout out to you and to Alan for putting together this IntegrateLive. And to see the turnout last week was just insane. Never could have dreamed. We had so many people online right at the beginning, and so many people stayed through the whole thing, and just it was awesome. It was awesome to be a part of it. And like Chris mentioned, fantastic to have 3 awesome vendors who normally I'm the one doing a live demo, and they did all the work for me there. So it was fun to be able to just walk everybody through and guide everybody through how the solution could get put together.
Yeah, well, you've got an incredible ability, Ryan, at doing that. And for everybody listening, the first time I met Ryan, I didn't know Ryan up until, I don't know, maybe like 6 months ago, Ryan?
Something like that, yeah. I think we had emailed once before.
Yep. But Chris and I have a long history of friendship, and I was in Nashville at the Vertec office, visiting the team. I got to meet you then about 6 months ago, but this was literally maybe 4 weeks leading up to the Vertec Build-a-thon event for virtual ICC, which, Ryan, you're the guy on that, right?
Yes. I was on stage for the Build-a-thon, but we had a team of people at Vertec that did a whole lot of work to pull that off and make that happen. So it was an amazing opportunity for sure.
Yeah, well, you guys did a great job with it, and we got to be part of the actual watch party down in San Antonio. It was a lot of fun. So thanks for everything, Vertec, that you're doing for the community. Now, Alan, before we move on, I'm going to go ahead and just go camera dark. My IT team, for those that don't know, I work for Canary full time. The reason IntegrateLive has happened is that Canary has been generous enough to donate a good bit of my time for the last 3 or 4 months towards this project, this initiative. Alan has transitioned and is coming to IntegrateLive as a full-time employee as well. And so it seemed like a really simple concept. Hey, let's launch a community. I had no idea how many hours it was going to consume. So without Canary's support of helping me financially afford to be able to do this, and Alan coming in full time and him taking this leap of faith, this whole thing wouldn't be able to happen. There has to be that impetus to get it started and manage it and grow it. It's a ton of work. All of that said, I need to pop my camera off because I've got a web camera that's located in front of my keyboard. So if I start trying to type, you guys see weird camera images like that. So I'm going to help manage the chat and take questions from the audience, but I will still be here, just no camera on. Alan, let's talk about the 800-pound MQTT gorilla in the room.
Yeah, so we're going to throw this to all of you. Again, the question, there's a ton of conversation around MQTT. A lot of people, it was their first introduction to it. Others had questions around, JSON or Sparkplug B, but really want to just, want to talk through what makes MQTT, one, so special, and two, what is it that has really ignited this forest fire of MQTT kind of taking over specifically the control industry, but as Ian and Kyle can talk to, it's not just the control industry, it's much more broad than that. And probably the control industry is probably late coming to the party here, but I think we'll probably start with Chris, and then we'll go right through Vertec, then we'll go Kepware, Canary, and we will end with Mr. MQTT, Ian.
All right. Well, I'm going to give the basic answer, and then Ian and Ryan and everybody, I'm sure, are going to go much deeper on the technical. But this basic framework is how we determine it within our own company. And so I felt that it was useful and important of understanding first when to use MQTT. So the main purpose of this is that it can act as a data hub and distributor. So when you have multiple sources that your data is coming from, and you have multiple endpoints that you want it to go to, the old way of doing this is that you set up this spaghetti web of all of these different endpoints reaching down to all of these different sources, and it gets chaotic and hectic. And a much cleaner way of doing that is letting MQTT broker be that distributor and have that publish and subscribe methodology going about it. So example for that, if you're in a facility and you have one PLC that's coming up to one SCADA system, and it's the only way that you can ever use that data point, it's ridiculous to use MQTT, unnecessary. And if you are out in a remote field and you have a bunch of signal fire devices that are measuring different pressures and levels and I/O, MQTT is one of the best and only ways to set up that architecture so that that can be feeding into multiple enterprise systems. And so it's picking that right moment of you're not going to use it always, but when you do use it, it's your best friend.
Yeah, and I'll just piggyback on that. On the IoT gateway that Kepware server has created, the ease of that and the ease of Hive Enqueue, it's phenomenal. So just the ability to be able to connect to all of those different devices. And I know I'm kind of taking some of Kyle's thunder, but just from a user of Kepware and the ability of what it can connect to, but then to be able to make those connections and then so seamlessly get it connected to a broker is great. And Ryan, I'll throw it to you. You had made a comment about MQTT being open source and a true kind of openness of it. You want to speak on that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the biggest benefits of MQTT is that, the creators of it decided that it was actually going to be a truly open standard. So we've got, OPCUA, the O in OPCUA stands for open, but you have to pay to get access to the standard documents to build something in it. So, the thing about MQTT that's awesome is there are scores of open source projects of just Python clients to do stuff with MQTT. You see non-industrial applications like Ubiquity Networks, all of their hardware. They've got their cloud key remote control. That all uses MQTT to make their things happen. And it's just written on base TCP. It can literally do anything. And that's one of its greatest strengths. And it truly being open means that the community, like we've proven time and time again with every other open source large project and truly open protocol and standard, the community really does make it better and really does improve the technology and really makes a lean, efficient push to get to the next level. And all the ways that MQTT has been used just proves that out. And it's just going to continue to get adopted in more and more scenarios and environments, especially in situations when devices at the edge of the network come online and offline, because it handles that state management so well. You're going to see that it's just going to grow more and more.
Yeah, and I think to piggyback on that, I think we're going to start with Code Assist and Wagyu and PLC Next being able to start having the actual PLC logic publish to the broker. Well, now your single source of truth and your unified namespace really starts to take an impact, right? Because now I'm no longer having to pass that tag to another device and create a tag and then publish. I can publish from the source. So It's going to become more and more impactful.
Yeah, and the low-level, lightweight nature of it too means that I can onboard it onto that PLC hardware without eating up clock time and all of the other things that you would need to do. So I think
that's going to get really important.
Going to be a big deal.
That's going to get really important as we start to take advantage of this new IoT SIM cards that are low bandwidth, but give you the kind of the LTE connectivity. So I can get a PLC connected to a broker, but I can be within that 500 or under megabit, size for the month and still be fine because of the lightweightness of it.
Yep, for sure.
Kyle, you're up. MQTT, what is it? Why do we need it? Why did you put it into your software?
Sure. Yeah, I'll add a little bit here too. Obviously I agree with everything that you guys are talking about, but I kind of want to focus a little bit more on just the the actual protocol itself. Inherently, it has that publish subscribe, and it's publishing by exception. So really, what that means is, if you look at traditional, we'll say OPC UA, where you've got, hey, I'm sending data no matter what, every 1,000 milliseconds, every 500 milliseconds, I'm sending this data point, whether it changes or not. With MQTT, that's only being published on that data change. So you start to save a little bit of bandwidth there. And I'm going to call out someone who I see is actually participating now, but a gentleman by the name of Jonathan Huddle. I really hope I got your last name right. But Jonathan published a few years ago this great white paper, PowerPoint, some sort of document. I believe it actually lives on Inductive Automation's website somewhere, but he did a great study into, let's look at the actual payloads between MQTT, OPC UA, Modbus, and let's compare and contrast, and let's look at these payloads in these certain, in these certain scenarios. And you can see firsthand, really, up close, how much more lightweight MQTT is than, let's say, OPC UA. And, as Chris pointed out, you're not going to use MQTT every single time. There are definitely instances where OPC UA maybe makes a little bit more sense, but we've seen if you have a large distributed architecture or you're trying to get, take advantage of having data collection at the edge, MQTT really, really comes in handy. And that's why, quite honestly, when it was 2015, Kepware put in the IoT gateway with MQTT. That was the whole reason. We saw that this was becoming a trend, and it was, I think, Alan, you had said a little bit late to the controls industry, per usual, par for the course for us. But we're starting to, see customers take advantage of it more and more. Then additionally, too, because of that lower payload, if you look at the cloud providers, the Azures, the AWSs, the Google Cloud, they're making money not necessarily by, hey, how many apps did you deploy? It's how much data are you sending, and we're gonna bill you per kilobyte per gig, whatever it is. So if you look at something, let's say, hey, I'm sending one tag over OPC UA that's sending data every second, you're wasting a lot of money. Or hey, let's say it's MQTT where you're gonna have a smaller payload and you're only sending data when it changes. So there's a lot of advantages to using that in the right scenario.
I just dropped a link in the chat. So I had the privilege of meeting Jonathan at a, what was it? I think Ignition Oil and Gas meetup where he presented that finding that he did. In the blog article I wrote, there is a link to his work to make it easy. So if you want to hit in the chat, Jonathan, if you're live at your desk actually listening, I'd like to just real quick, if the group's cool with it, I'd like to get Jonathan, and if he gives me a thumbs up in the chat, I thought we might bring Jonathan into the conversation real quick. Jonathan, can you give oh, he's on. Come on, let's bring Jonathan in.
That'd be great.
There we go. Jonathan, can you hear us? Oh, we don't have your audio.
All right, well, let's try that one.
There he is.
There you go.
Oh, thanks for the shout out and putting me on the spot. How's it going?
You're welcome.
Awesome.
Welcome to the community.
Yeah, thanks.
Let's get all the disclaimers out of the way. Jonathan,
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you some questions about your findings. You're not representing an end user. You're not representing any, right? This is just what you found in your own independent study. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
All right. Walk us through, if you would, just what you researched, and give us a 60-second rundown what you found out, if you don't mind.
Well, I mean, the gist of it is, I've been a avid MQTT fan for a long time, but there weren't really any studies where someone sat down with Wireshark and really tried to figure out exactly how much more efficient it could be. So MQTT is all by itself is, Modbus is pretty efficient, but there's no context. And you have to pull it over and over and over. You don't know when it changes. So MQTT can be about as efficient as Modbus if you're polling it every 2 seconds or whatever, right, on a polling interval. One of the biggest, most beautiful benefits of it is the on-change, only sending the values when they change. And then that completely changes the picture where, it could be up to 99% more efficient depending on how often your data is changing. In the real world, usually it's not that much, but it certainly is many times more efficient than the communication methods we're using today. So it's exciting stuff.
So I'm hearing you say change rate is important for efficiency. Jonathan, we've got Josh from Canary, who's obviously all over the place looking into historic data. Josh, just real quick, speaking to change rate, in your experience, if somebody's historizing 1,000 tags, what % of those tags actually are changing every second or changing once a minute?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the industry. Like with oil and gas, it's sometimes less than 10%. They're changing real frequently. The other ones are changing very infrequently. So you get a lot of payback with that report by exception using that method, across the wire. So yeah, sometimes it's even less than that. But yeah, I'd say probably about 10%, in general, very generically speaking.
Yeah.
But manufacturing is different. Manufacturing has more high-speed data, so you get less. But regardless, if you're not publishing 100% of the values, every scan, you're gaining some efficiencies over something like Modbus or the protocol like that. So
yeah, thanks, Josh.
Yep.
Hey, Jonathan, tell the group if somebody wants to kind of track you and follow you, see what you're up to now. Where are you, and where are we going to see you next?
Well, LinkedIn's probably a great place to find me, Jonathan Hoddle. I haven't been posting a whole lot recently because I'm got my head down building a hosted Ignition offering.
Nice.
Of course, we're leveraging modern technology, all the things you're talking about, going to try to do it a little more advanced than what people are doing right now. So I'm sure I'll start posting again here soon. So.
Okay, well, and keep Alan and I in the loop. We'd love to highlight what you're working on in the future.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
All right, buddy. Talk to you later. All right,
Ian.
guys. Didn't mean to disrail us, but I didn't realize Jonathan was in the group until I saw Steve in the chat mention it, and he's such a great resource of knowledge. Thanks, guys, for allowing me that.
That was great to have him on. It's great to meet him. So.
That was a good example of being on the fly in this rundown. That's what it's all about, Jeff.
Absolutely.
Real time.
That's right.
Ian. Hey, Ian, take it away.
Yes.
And here's the burning question that I'd love for you to answer. And keep in mind, I don't think this is an MQTT versus OPC-UA conversation, right? This isn't a debate, right? But I am curious. I mean, Hive has built a business model on MQTT. Please address why that protocol when there was other options they could have tried to build on, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think so. So Hive and Enqueue and myself come from probably a very different perspective here. Like, so we're not kind of in the industrial automation. We're not an industrial automation company per se, right? So Hive and Enqueue is very much a general purpose piece of infrastructure software that many different industries work right with, and that's really the story about MQTT. And I think that's an important point about MQTT for this industry is that. My perception of the industrial automation industry is there's a lot of legacy, a lot of proprietary protocols that kind of keep data kind of in silos, right? And to modernize and to really get the efficiencies that companies need to get out of their operations, I think kind of moving to more open standards is the way to do it, right? And MQTT is very much this open standard. Right? It's absolutely in kind of things like fleet management industries, transportation industry, connected cars, and right. So it's very, very widely applicable, but widely used. And I think that's powerful for kind of companies and kind of that we're talking about here, right? Is because you're not using something special. You're using something that the entire technology industry is getting behind. And so back to the investment in that, the progression of that, the adoption of that, I think is coming because of that. So Hive and Enqueue kind of went towards MQTT. Really, kind of the founders saw the vision of MQTT, right? Kind of those early days of kind of back to the days when we called it M2M, right? M2M, where kind of they really saw the need to. You need to have a very lightweight, simple protocol to move data from these millions of devices that are going to get connected over the years, right? And they kind of started working with some major companies, car companies, on kind of what that would look like in terms of the infrastructure that needed to be supported with that. And this is how we got to kind of where we are today with Hive and Enqueue. But MQTT is very much an ecosystem. There's lots of vendors. Kind of most of the cloud vendors support MQTT. And I think I keep on coming back to it. I think that's the beauty of it, is it's so widely applicable that it's a safe choice now for people to go forward with.
All right, awesome. Thank you. Real quick, we had a couple other questions that we wanted to address from some of the comments and questions from last week. So one of them was, how do I get MQTT data into SQL? I don't know if Brian or Chris, if you want to handle that, or
so
I can do it, but I think it'd be better if you did it.
Our easy answer, and maybe this is a little bit of our bias, is just use Ignition. You can consume that MQTT data, and then you could send it straight to a SQL database. It's built up for that. There's a lot of easy tools within it that you can accomplish that. In all fairness, Brian alluded to this also, there's dozens of just public Python tools that you can use. as the ability to consume that MQTT data and publish it to a SQL database. But yes, you know our default, because it's normally part of a larger project that we're doing this.
Right.
It's not just a one-off that we desire one tag to be in SQL. It's normally part of something a lot bigger than that.
And if
Have
somebody
you used the recorder?
Yeah. So yeah, on
Did
that,
you recommend recorder?
it depends on what you're doing, right? So if you've got a handful of MQTT devices and tags that are a part of a larger system, then they're one. If Ignition is consuming MQTT stuff and it's a part of a bigger system, then you'd probably use some other historian connected to Ignition and pipe that data through the Ignition tag structure. But if you are attempting to have Ignition actually functioning as your MQTT broker with the engine and the distributor modules, then yeah, you would use the historical module provided by CirrusLink to actually store that data to a SQL database. But if you're talking about a bunch of time series data, then a time series historian like Canary is also something that you want to look into, and look at solving the how do I get the data out and look at it problem sort of the more right way, so you can get that efficient storage gain. Because I don't want to turn this into the Canary talk, but save a lot of space putting that historical data in time series database.
Yeah. Well, we've spent 45 minutes now almost talking about MQTT, so let's move on to something a little bit different. So I'm going to ask each of you, what was your entry into the automation industry? So let's start with Kyle.
Sure. Yeah. So I actually started right after college at a Rockwell distributor. I actually in the New England kind of New York area. It was interesting. So I was actually brought aboard as just a general account manager, and quickly realized that I don't want to sell light bulbs or wire. And I had much more of an interest in PLCs and software, and like trying to figure out problems. So I ended up essentially creating a semi-training program there to become a Rockwell specialist. So I spent time working with VFDs, working on the servo motors, working on motion stuff. Eventually found myself in the PLC sort of InfoSoft specialist position, and then went on, got my CCNA for Cisco, did industrial networking for a while, and then eventually ended up at Kepware. So that's been about 10 years now or so. So it just started off as like, hey, this industrial space is really cool, but I don't like light bulbs and I don't really care too much about wires or panels. And hey, this technology stuff looks pretty cool. Let's look into that a little bit more.
Josh?
Yeah, so coming out of college, there's a local aggregates company here, one of the top 10 aggregate companies, and before I even graduated from college, they were looking. Friend of mine I was playing volleyball with at the time. It was like, hey, we're looking for an automation engineer. It's like, hey, I'll apply for that. So they ended up hiring me before I even graduated from college, and 6 months in, it's like, hey, we're going to build a fuel system. So we built a fuel dispensing system, an embedded fuel dispensing system, and that led into custom control systems with Mqtt 22 hardware and Allen Bradley hardware, and so I spent 9 years doing that. So really interesting, and then it kind of bleeds into what we do here at Canary is kind of on the back end of that. We didn't use Canary there, but we could have. There were some problems that we found ourselves troubleshooting that kind of like phenomena problems with electrical issues, and having some of the time series data and long-term storage of it would really have changed the game for us at the time. So that's kind of where I got started out of college. So
Ryan, you're up.
All right. Yeah. So my my background was in software reverse engineering and malware analysis. So I was trying to re-weaponize computer viruses to attack the people that wrote them, which was a lot of fun. But I was in a spot where I needed a job, got a entry level controls position at a big diesel engine manufacturer for semi trucks, and worked for two controls engineers that just had spent their whole 30-40 year careers, learned a lot from them. But also in that facility there was an MES solution that was just ahead of its time, just really all the way into what everybody is chasing now, as far as getting those solutions to be leverage all the technology in the right way to make the world more efficient. And the light bulb just went off in my head, and I said, you know what, I've got to do this. This is a blast. This is a lot of fun. And so worked for another end user in the automotive space for a long time, and then found Vertec. And now we're trying to help get those successful solutions that actually help people do their jobs, whether it's support staff or data analytics or MES solutions or whatever it is. I just have a blast making people's lives easier, and that's how I got into it.
And that is Ryan. That's awesome. So if that's your motivation each day when you get up to go to work, do you have a bad day?
There are still bad days. There's always bad days, but no, it definitely makes work a lot of fun.
For any end user listening, if you see Ryan working on your project, you just walk right up to him, plant your finger in his chest, and say, "You make my job easier." That's what you do today.
Bring it on.
That's great.
Ian, you're up.
So as I said, I'm probably kind of almost like an outsider. So I've been kind of my background's in open source software, quite frankly. So I used to work at the Eclipse Foundation. We had a lot of embedded software development tools with our C++ IDE. So there's a number of embedded vendors that would use the Eclipse C++ IDE for their IDE. So I got involved in kind of that area. But it's really been since I've been at Hive and Enqueue where we saw the an incredible customer demand for kind of a MQT broker that's really kind of brought me into the industry and the company into the industry.
Leaves you, Chris.
All right. Well, I grew up with it because both my dad and my uncle were PLC programmers and HMI programmers before it actually was SCADA. And I told them explicitly, I'm like, I will never do what you do. I am not getting into engineering. And so, I finished my last year of school in Sweden, came back, and they're like, just do it for 2 years. That's all you need. And I'm like, all right, fine, I will do this. But I am leaving at 2 years on the mark. And so I started doing estimating and project management. And I left at 2 years on the mark and went and did business strategy and branding, and then ended up coming back and became a partner in that company and got into director of operations and managing projects and running a business and engineering manager and all that. And here I am, 18 years later, still doing this engineering thing that I was never going to do. And I love it.
Did you say you finished your schooling in Sweden?
I did. I did 1 year of schooling in Uppsala, Sweden, which is just north of Stockholm.
Fascinating.
Well, that's a good idea. Why don't we, why didn't we all do that?
It's my recommendation to anybody in college now.
All right, Jeff, where you want to go next?
Well, I think we had, when we think about the discussion that we had last week in the Q&A, there was a ton of connectivity questions. I mean, hey, can I connect to this? How do I connect to this? Even actually today in our question and answer already today, there's been a direct question. Can you connect Kepware direct to Canary or Canary in the cloud or Canary anywhere? And the answer, I think, anytime someone asks one of those questions is always yes, right? Like there's almost always a way to connect something to something. I don't want to move on out of the MQTT conversation just yet without positioning the true why. And it's been said a couple times subtly, but let's just really stamp this home. The why here is to create a hub, right? Josh answered it well to the question of, couldn't you just connect Kepware to Canary? Josh here just wrote, yes, sure, you could use our OPC collector, but the benefit here is to plug other vendors into the data stream. The idea here, the architecture that we're exploring and that we're frankly going to probably stay with pretty consistently in upcoming months, if not for the next year, is this platform concept of creating a hub model where everything can come in and interact with a broker-centric architecture. We're not saying MQTT has to be the only solution for broker-centric, but I just want to drive home this concept of let's stop trying to connect everything to everything through these weird one-offs, and let's start centralizing to a broker architecture. Now, I want to say that, and
I'll
then
take it a step further, Jeff.
Okay.
Here's the reason that the why is so, like for MQTT specifically, why it's so impactful is not because it's lightweight. It's not because it connects to everything, because it does those things, right? We know that. But the reality is it leverages security, data integrity to a level that you can't get outside of that unified namespace, that single source of truth, where you're literally publishing the data with the context and then being able to use that, whether it's just an HMI that's doing the control or a data scientist who's going to take that and actually drive some sort of value or learning from it that we could never get before. And so you get the data integrity, you get the security. It's certificate based, encrypted. And so then that opens up a whole nother opportunity to, my journey with Era was, I spent 2 years trying to figure out a way that we could get an edge device in an oil and gas targeted, foreign country targeted company. How do we get that so we can publish the data from the edge back on the prem? Well, the only thing I ever was able to get approved through cybersecurity was MQTT, because I could lock down all my outgoing ports, because it was encrypted, because I could put the error certificate on it. And now I have a mechanism that gives me both read and write access, but I do it securely. And then when you throw Ignition into the mix, with the work that we did with Arlen, where now you can actually validate the write using Ignition at the edge. So it's no longer just username and topic. We're now passing the entire security context all the way back to the edge, so that write doesn't happen unless you verify it with your groups. So yeah, it's incredibly impactful for security, data integrity, data usage, right? All those things. And so anyway, I'll get off my soapbox here.
Well, I don't think you're off for wanting to preach it. I want to make sure that we're also discussing not just MQTT as the solution, right? Because we know that in order for a company to really see success, they've got to leave room for other technology as well. Chris, you brought up an interesting point at the very beginning of the conversation. You said, hey, if there's just one little thing out there that you need to get data from, do you want to go down the path of firing up a broker and go through MQTT? And you said, hey, probably not. So is this where you look at, or maybe I should ask more pointedly, where does Vertex typically say, hey, you know what, here's the OPC architecture. This is the place for an OPC architecture. This is the place for an MQTT architecture. Here's how we use a hybrid. just for somebody listening to this and trying to figure out what to build a future architecture on, what's some of that analysis they can do?
Yep. So a few factors. Geography matters and how dispersed. So oil and gas, some of the stuff in solar, some of the stuff in water distribution. Anytime there is a large geography with sketchy telecommunications and continued rocks. Anytime that we have an enterprise solution where there are multiple business systems that want to be consuming the same point, they do not need to be reaching all the way down to the field device, and therefore Mqtt is perfect. And so separate that back into the opposite of, again, if it just has one endpoint or a limited number of devices in a very small geography, you start to lean towards an OPC solution.
Mm-hmm. And I'll add another sort of category for that. Let's say I've got a facility and I've got a bunch of fixed equipment, and that's all that's in my facility. Say I've got 20 injection molding machines, and that's it. We're going to use OPC UA. Those injection molding machines are bolted to the floor. Their network is conduit piped. We're done, right? Like it's not worth the setup. But let's say I've got a facility and it's in food and bev, and they've got temporary checkware systems that need to move from line to line, or any other facility or any other application you can think of where I've got this thing that sometimes we use it, sometimes we don't, and it's over Wi-Fi, and it moves over here and then it moves over there and then it goes over here and it does this, and I still need data out of it. Now Mqtt looks awesome because I can have connection go in and out, and I can deal with birth certificate, death certificate, last will and testament, all of those benefits that are packaged in Sparkplug B. And that just solves all of the problems. And OPC UA would be really upset if you had half of your devices turned off. And it makes all of that simpler and easier. So that's another big application we start using.
Did you just create a wheel rule if the asset has wheels on it, or if I need wheels to get to the asset, Mqtt?
Maybe it's a wheel rule. I use I use conduit pipe as my utility. If there's hard pipe going to it, then it's not going anywhere.
Okay.
Nice.
So if I've got a traditional factory setup and everything's hard piped, do I look at Mqtt then as being my protocol of choice to jump data out of that facility to the next enterprise level? Is that when I would look at Mqtt?
I would say for sure. Anytime you're talking about pushing data up to the enterprise, especially time series, the efficiency that you get from that report by exception, right? Your IT department's going to thank you for not clogging their ISP pipe to the facility. And then, like Alan mentioned, the security that you get just for free because it's all baked in. And then the ability at the enterprise to serve that data everywhere to any system and have that single source of truth. Absolutely, Jeff. That becomes another scenario where Mqtt just does all the work for you.
Okay. So now I'm talking to Ian and I'm saying, hey, Ian, I've got plants in Europe, I've got plants in the United States, I've got something out in Australia, and I want to use Hive. One of the questions that came in last week, can I choose the region for my Hive Enqueue cluster in Azure or AWS?
Yes. So today you can't. Today we're just in a region in Frankfurt in Germany. In the future, you're going to be able to. But for that type of architecture, because we actually have a number of companies that customers that do that type of architecture. Typically, what happens is they have a broker in each of those factories around the world, right? So it's on premise in the factory, and they'll bridge those to a data center broker, right? So in the data center broker will be in one region, or on AWS or Azure, or beyond on their own premise, right? So that's kind of the use case we've been kind of observing is that when you kind of, for each of the distributed factories out, kind of you typically install the broker within the factory. These frankly kind of, if the broker is a single point of failure potentially, right? You don't want to have internet connectivity relied upon to run the factory, right? So you want to have the broker in the factory to make sure you have continuous operation, right? Bridging the data to the data center broker is kind of more kind of unintrusive, right? So you can kind of certainly do that kind of outbound to the factory.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So Jeff, actually, I kind of would want to add on to that. You know, and I think my sales team would be upset if I at least didn't mention, you know, with Kepware, you have that OPC UA and that MQTT ability all in that same server. So if you're looking at, hey, I need, and we've seen this before, is, hey, if I, you know, have a small, you know, system here that's running OPC UA for my local SCADA system for all of my control tags, you know, whatever I need, but I also want to send, you know, OEE type of data or performance data out that's not control data out to an MQTT broker, I can accomplish both of those things on one instance of Kepware. So you start to get, you know, some of these hybrid approaches become more and more common.
That's a good, man, Kyle. Did you just go salesperson on us?
I wear a lot of hats, man.
that was good. Hey, so you got a good sales plug in there. Now I'm going to ask you a pointed question, and this is the price of admission for the sales plug. You ready?
Sure.
And I agree. I think that's wise. It's a good point to point out.
Knows it's coming.
I'm giving Kyle a hard time a little bit as a sales guy. But so I do love that Kepware can be that single point of distribution, right, for an OPC UA and an MQTT JSON stream.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle, come on, man. I'm a Sparkplug guy. You know, Ian and I are Sparkplug guys. We see the value in Sparkplug. Mm-hmm. Is Kepware going to see the value and go down a Sparkplug release on the roadmap in the next year?
Hey, that's all the time I have. Great, thanks, guys. No, you know, honestly, we get this question a lot. At this point, it's a no, but I want to elaborate a little bit more on this because my product management team usually kind of gets annoyed because I at least once a week go over and like, hey, so got another request for Sparkplug. Where are we at? And there's some things we need to consider. So if we look at Kepware, you know, we've been around for 25 plus years. Only until recently, and by that I mean like 18 months ago or so, we've positioned ourselves as this larger enterprise style of software. We've always been, hey, you can, you know, connect your one machine to this local SCADA system, and hey, we can send stuff to a broker. But we've kind of been focused on these smaller projects and not positioned ourselves into this enterprise play. So the last 18 months, we've done a lot of work around packaging. We're doing work on remote configuration of multiple instances of Kepware. We're doing integrations now with Windows Active Directory. There's a lot of enterprise style features that have been worked into this. At the same time, around 18 months ago, when we started making this journey, was right around the time where, you know, Azure, AWS, Google Cloud had made a big leap into pushing OPC UA and developing more into that. So at that point, we're pretty far along in we're having a funded project to develop those. So at this point, Sparkplug, while we're aware of it, I agree with all the benefits. I wish we would have it. I just don't, at this point, it's not in our roadmap. Now, and again, I know the argument here is like, well, Sparkplug B helps with the enterprise stuff. Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I agree totally. It's just sort of where we're faced and where we're at this point. What I can say, and where this community can help, let us know, because the more you guys, you know, go to me, go directly to our PM team, it's more than just me annoying them once a week. It's actual customers out in the field. It's actual implementers, and we're happy to have those conversations. You know, the more ammo we have, the more we can turn around and prioritize Sparkplug being.
You get the home phone numbers.
You can have my cell phone.
No, we want those that we need to talk to. We'd like to get their home phone number and what time they eat dinner.
Yeah, we'll see what I can do.
Well, you know, it's Kyle, I appreciate you letting me put you on the spot on it. It's, you know, we on our side, it's the plug and play nature of it that we're really, what everybody loves, what we said in the first 5 minutes of the call was everything worked, right?
Mm-hmm.
You and Ian hadn't spoken before. You hadn't really tried this before it worked. And we are excited on the Sparkplug side to have a standard that everyone can essentially meet, test against, and certify their products through an open through the Eclipse Foundation, right? Through a not financially benefited foundation that's managing that's user managed specification, and just ensure this plug and play compatibility. So we'll help push on our side, and we appreciate you taking that hard question.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. We're coming down the final minutes. There are a couple quick questions we do want to get on. Ian has to drop. So Ian, thank you for being here. I appreciate your time. I am going to ask everybody that's listening, we do need your help with one thing. Just here's the ask today. On LinkedIn, will you please find the IntegrateLive group page and will you join? It's something that we really want to move this conversation into a LinkedIn environment as much as possible. We'll be live streaming this in there, the LinkedIn group in the future. So please go over and join today if you would for us. Alan, what do you say we let's wrap up with one more question, and then as promised, we're going to go into dad joke mode and we're going to finish this thing out lightning round style. So here's the question, Josh from the Canary side, and then I want to move directly from the Canary side over to Vertec with Ryan. Chris is hopping off. Chris, thank you for being here today. Well. Okay, so we'll end it right now without the dad jokes. We're going to save the dad jokes because I don't think we can carry a lightning round without the guys on here. Josh, wrap us up with the data is now in Canary. You're connected to your MQTT brokers. You've got data coming in from Kepware, OPC servers on the plant floor as well. You've got a data-rich environment built within Canary. Typically, what are you seeing people doing with that data at that point moving forward?
Yeah, so I mean, typically they're applying what our models, which you can transform your tag names, you can call out assets within that browse tree you've created, and create different models or different views, what we call them, for accounting versus operations, same data being exposed. You can hit our web API with tools like Power BI or some other analytic tools that have the ability to pull data via an HTTP JSON API call. We also have a publisher service that can push that data out, so you can model it and transform it, the names, and republish it out to MQTT on a separate topic for consumption by another tool if you'd like. You can do alerts that way. We have a calc server that you can write calculations against a series of assets or a single asset or a single tag if you'd like. So there's all kinds of contextual information you can add to that data once it gets into Canary. And then obviously, our trending tool, Axiom, gives you very easy self-service trending for sensor values, as well as the ability to build dashboards and view those dashboards, publish them out for other people to be able to use, to just give you a really good look at what your operations are doing.
Now Kyle's over here storming mad because Josh, you just pulled a sales plug too. Kyle, do you have any? Kyle, you want to ask Josh a difficult question and put him on the spot?
Man, I don't really have. Nah, I'm not gonna do it to you. I like Canary. I won't do it.
Jeff, one of the things we didn't really cover was Sparkplug B, and I think a lot of the users may have a question on what it is, why we use it, why we're pushing it. So maybe for the next one we can go over that, or on the LinkedIn channel or something like that, because there are pros and cons to it.
Yeah, well, actually, that's a great point, Josh. Let's talk about the upcoming virtual workshop, April the 20th. Alan, who are our guests for the next episode 2?
We have Brown Engineering will be hosting, and so we have Brown Engineering. We have Signal Fire is going to be bringing in their signifier device, and we will be connecting that to a using MQTT Sparkplug B. So we will have an opportunity to talk more about Sparkplug B in the next workshop, and then that will be going to a hosted Ignition cloud service that Brown Engineering hosts, and we'll be showing the connectivity of actually connecting the device to some sensors, publishing that to a broker, Ignition subscribing to that data, and then showing a actual application that it will be using. And then I believe we're going to have the actual end user that Brown Engineering did this for come be a part of the discussion at the end of how it actually has impacted their company.
And we will be using specifically in this whole live demo Sparkplug B. So I think, Josh, that is going to be the time on the following rundown. Let's get you back in that conversation too, Josh, just from your committing side and building of applications with Sparkplug B side, maybe for that conversation. Okay. Guys, it is time for us to wrap up. I can't end it though, Alan. We can't end it without a couple jokes.
Well, I tell you,
here we go.
I told my wife yesterday that she has to start embracing her mistakes. So she gave me a hug.
Oh, that's pretty good. Well, I used to hate facial hair, Alan, but it's been growing on me lately.
Man. I used to be addicted to soap, but now I'm clean.
Ah, that's close.
I had a great joke about
how long? You had a great joke about what?
I had a great joke about COVID, but I didn't want to spread it around.
Guys, I have to. I saw a new airline on my flight down here to Cancun. It's specifically for bald people. It's called the Receding Airlines.
Nice.
Oh, and with that, let's put the first episode of the rundown in the bag. Guys, thank you so much for being part of it, for joining us today. To the community, thank you. Go over to LinkedIn, get involved with the group, and let's get you on the mailing list for all of these future pieces of content. Thanks, everybody. Special thanks to Jonathan for hopping on live without any prep. Good way to go, man. Yeah. Everybody, have an awesome day. Find somebody you can add value to, serve them, and continue to bring your ideas and the conversation to the community. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone.